stain remover. A confession from clean hands. Blood comes out easier than you'd think. Cold water first, always cold. Hot water sets the stain remover. A confession from then clean hydrogen peroxide for fresh stains than you'd think. Or ammonia for old water first, always from the outside in. Hot water never sets the protein. Patience, then hydrogen peroxide for fresh stains. I learned this or ammonia at my father's dry cleaning shop in Shibuya from the outside in. Matsumoto never cleaners. Patience 43 years everything in stain removal. I learned this at my father's dry cleaning shop in Shibuya. My own blood. Matsumoto cleaner. The split lip. 43 for leaving a shirt on a hanger wrong. See, I was Kenji. 6 when he first showed me how my face into the sink. My own blood. Cold water from the split lip. The stain knows you're sorry for leaving a shirt on a hanger wrong. Forgives you if you do it right. My name, he said, Kenji Matsumoto, pressing my face into the sink. I am 52 years old. Water. I have a stain knows you're sorry. Operated Matsumoto cleaner. It forgives you 27 years. My name is Kenji Matsumoto. I am known in the neighborhood for my attention to detail. I have owned my reasonable operated Matsumoto cleaners and the fact 27 that no stain defeats since my father's death. I am also responsible for the disappearance for my attention to detail between 1997 and 2024. And that no stain defeats me. This is my confession. I am also responsible for the disappearance of 19 people. My attempt to explain how a child becomes a monster. And how a dry cleaning shop is my confession becomes a graveyard childhood. My documentation, 1972. My attempt to explain how a child becomes a monster. The signs how a dry cleaning shop becomes a graveyard childhood. The psychologist 1970 examined this confession. 1987. The bedwetting until age 10 were there early. The cruelty to animals. Tell me now. The fascination psychologists who will eventually examine this confession form emotional connections. The bedwetting until age 10 existed in context. The cruelty to animals in the back room. The fascination modifiers, where my father kept form emotional connections. But these signs exist in context. Required punishment. In the back room crying required more punishment, where my father kept being alive when I wasn't in school. Constant. Careful perfection that mistakes required punishment. I was 7 that when I killed my first animal punishment. A cat that being alive neighborhood required constant. It had knocked over a rack of clean clothes or else. My father beat me for not when I killed my first animal. Then handed me the cat and said, make it understand. Neighborhood stray. Make it sorry. It had knocked over a rack of clean back alleys. Held its head under water in a bucket used for soaking stained linen and said, make it understand. I watched it struggle. Make it sorry. Felt its pulse the cat slow to the back against my palm. Held its head under water in a bucket used for soaking stained linen. Pleasure. I watched the observation that something alive felt its become not slow against my palm, and that the transition was simpler than I'd imagined. No guilt. My father praised pleasure. Just the observation praised me for something alive had become not alive. Said I was learning control, and that the transition was learning to remove than I'd imagined. The way we removed my father praised me thoroughly. The first time he'd praised me for anything. After that, said I was learning control. Birds, learning to remove problems. The way we removed stains. My father thoroughly pest control, leaving no trace. I called it practice. After that, I killed sexual abuse started when I was 9. Rats. My uncle first, during a family dinner, called it pest control. I called it my father's business partner. The sexual abuse started my father when I was 9. They called it teaching first, preparing a family dinner in the back room of the shop. Understand my place. Then my father's business in the storage room, among the clean father himself. Plastic. They called it the chemical smell of perchloroethylene. The hiss making me understand my place. I learned to separate. It happened in the storage room. Observe my body from clean clothes in plastic. To treat chemical what was happening the way I treated stains. The hiss of steam press, something to be managed. I learned to separate. Processed. Removed to observe my body from outside it. I stopped feeling. To treat what was happening the way I treated with preferences or pain. Something to be managed. Processed. Became a function instead of consciousness. A tool. I stopped feeling. A thing that removed stains. Stopped being a person with preferences or pain existed or personality to serve. Became a psychologist instead. Will say this is when I became what I am. thing that removed empathy dies and accepted violation. The capacity for human connection dissolved only to serve. They're not wrong. The psychologists will say age 12 is when I became what I am for anyone. When empathy died, understood humans, when the capacity for human behavior dissolved to be manipulated. They're not wrong. Saw relationships only as transactions for anyone. Knew that people understood humans fundamentally only as patterns of complicated stains to be manipulated, to be removed. My mother existed peripherally only as transactions. She worked the front counter, knew that people were fundamentally smiled at customers, just complicated stains, never acknowledged to be what happened in the back room. My mother existed peripherally, never asked about the bruises. She worked the front counter, never questioned why I stopped making eye contact with customers. Around age 10, never acknowledged what happened in the back room. Age 13, never asked about the bruises. Told her explicitly what never father questioned why I stopped making eye contact. Around age 10, she looked at me with eyes like dead fish and said, age 13, don't make up stories, Kenji. Told her explicitly what father did. Terrible stain on your character. What uncle did. That night, she looked at me with eyes like dead fish and said, I watched the flames don't eat the make up stories, Kenji. The futon, the few possessions I had. Terrible stain on your character. I felt nothing. That night, just set fire to my room. I wondered how far I let it go before survival instinct forced me to call for help. The few possessions I had far. I felt the fire department came. Just observed. My parents wondered how far it was an accident before survival instinct forced me to call for help. Badly. Turns out I couldn't quite walk for 3 days. The fire but I had learned something important. My parents told myself it was without feeling it. I would destroy things so badly I was supposed to value without for 3 days. But I had learned my own life burning and feel only curiosity without feeling it. This could destroy things later I was supposed to value without is what made me useful. Could watch my own life who feels nothing and feel only curiosity about the 1987-1997. I would later understand. I graduated high school with perfect grades. A person who feels nothing can do anything. Apprenticeship. University. 1987-1997. I would continue the family graduated business. High school with perfect grades. My mother said nothing and no friends. I felt nothing. Declined university. Learned every aspect of dry cleaning. My father was pleased. The chemistry of the family business. The mechanics of my brother said nothing. The art of stain removal. I was good at every aspect of dry cleaning. Customers requested chemistry-specific solvents. Kenji can get anything out, they said. The art of stain removal. They had no idea how right they were. The shop itself was customers requested me specifically. Built in the 1950s. Kenji can get anything haphazardly over decades. Nothing defeats him. They had no idea how right customers waited. The shop itself was a maze. Behind that, the pressing built in the 1950s. Behind that, expanded haphazardly over difficult stains. The front behind that, where customers waited. Behind that, the pressing room. The basement had sublevel. Behind that, old storage room for difficult stains. Behind spaces that appeared on no blueprint, that only the family knew existed. The basement had sublevels where the building's previous owners had stored things they didn't want found. Spaces that appeared on no blueprint, that only the family knew existed. Where we put the stains that can't be removed. Where the building's previous owners had stored things they didn't want found. The ones that showed me when I was 20 instead of treatment. This is where we put the stains that can't be removed. Contaminated solvents. The permanent materials too toxic for normal disposal. Require burial. I understood he was teaching me something else. Chemical waste. My uncle died in 1995. Contaminated solvents. Heart attack, they said. Materials too toxic for normal disposal. In the back room of the shop. I understood he was teaching me something else. I put something in his tea. My uncle died in 1995. Something that stopped his heart slowly. Heart attack, over hours. They said. Something untraced in the back room of the shop. I watched him deteriorate. What actually happened? I watched him understand. In his tea. Near the end, something that stopped his heart slowly. Over watched him try to speak to something untraceable to save himself. I watched him deteriorate. I watched him understand the process. Near the end, the efficiency of it. Watched him try to speak. My father looked at me during the funeral to save himself. I felt nothing. The way you look at someone, just you suddenly understand what they are. The efficiency never touched me again. The clean end never let me be alone with me during the funeral. Never spoke at me except the way you look at someone when you suddenly understand what they are. because saying something would have meant acknowledging what he'd created. Never let me be alone with customers. What he'd made me become. Never spoke to me except 2 years later. He knew. Stroke. But he said nothing. Actual stroke. Because saying something would have meant acknowledging what he'd created. I felt nothing at his funeral. What he'd made me become. No relief. He died 2 years later. Just the observation that a problem had solved itself, not induced. I inherited the shop. I felt nothing at his funeral. My mother moved to Osaka to live with her sister. No grief. I never saw her again. Just the observation that a problem had solved itself. The maid inherited the shop. The basement. My mother moved to Osaka to live with her sister. I was finally free to become what I had always been the first Matsumoto cleaners. 1997. The maid's name was Takeshi Yamada. The basement was mine. A businessman. And I was finally free to become what I'd always been the first regularly. 1997 suits. His name was Takeshi Yamada. He also came in with bruises on his knuckles, late 40s, scratches on his neck. He came in regularly, blood under his nails that he didn't know showed that needed pressing. UV light hit them. He also came in with bruises on his knuckles. I recognized scratches on his neck. Had lived blood under his nails that he didn't know showed. Signs. When UV light, the way he looked at the young woman checking process at the convenience store next door, I recognized what he was. The way he talked about his daughter, with men like him. The way he smiled. The signs. I followed him. The way he looked at the young woman his patterns at the convenience store, learned his schedule. Discovered he liked to visit a certain establishment in Kabukicho. The way he smiled, where very young girls worked in circumstances. I watched his patterns that were not entirely legal. His schedule. I waited one night after he liked to visit a certain establishment. He came to pick up his suits, where very young girls worked. There was a difficult stain that were not entirely legal. Look at it in the back room. I waited one night after closing, trusting. He came to pick up his suits. Used to be told him what he wanted. There was a difficult stain. I showed him the stain and asked him to come look at it in the back room. Then he followed. I showed him the plastic bag. Arrogant. Put it over his head before he could react. What he wanted. I showed him the stain. There was no struggle. Observe the process. I showed him the plastic bag. It took 4 minutes. Put it over his head before he could react. He was strong. Hold it tight. But strength doesn't matter when you can't breathe. I waited until he was still. It took 4 minutes. I removed the bag. Longer than I'd calculated. Confirmed death. He was strong. No panic, but strength doesn't matter when you can't breathe. The satisfaction of a job completed properly. Then I removed the bag in plastic sheeting. Pulse confirmed death. Dragged him to the basement. No panic. To the sublevel. Just the satisfaction of a job completed properly. The old ventilation shaft plastic sheeting nowhere. Dragged him prepared the space. To the sublevel. The walls with waterproof membrane farthest back. Install the old ventilation shaft. Led to nowhere. Brought down the chemicals I'd been acquiring. This space. Hydrofluoric acid with waterproof industrial solvents. Installed a floor drain. It took 3 days. Brought down the chemicals I'd been acquiring. Contained by the ventilation. Hydrofluoric acid. Industrial subway tunnels. I dissolved Shibuya. It took 3 days. What remained bone fragments. The smell was contained by the ventilation. Insoluble materials I'd ground into the old subway tunnels. And mixed into the concrete. I was using to repair the basement floor. Teeth. Takeshi Yamada. Insoluble materials I ground. His wife reported him missing and mixed into the concrete. Investigated. I was using to repair the basement floor. His case went cold. Takeshi Yamada disappeared, but the process was proven. Reported him missing. The method was sound. Police investigated. I had found my purpose. The years between 1997-2024. 18 process was over 27 years. The method was sound. This averages to 0.6. I had found my purpose 7 kills per year. 1997-2024. Nothing 18 more that would create over 27 years. Nothing that would draw averages to 0. I was careful. 7 kills per year. Methodical. A sustainable rate. Deviated from protocol. Nothing that would create a pattern. Select targets who deserved removal. That would draw attention. Abusers. I was careful. Predators. People whose existence created deviated from Protocol 1. Observe for at least 3 months. Targets who deserved learn patterns. Confirm assessment. Predators. Create opportunities. Whose existence created suffering in the shop. Observe always for after 3 months. Always learn using the pretext of difficult stains. 3. Execute opportunities. No always in the suffering. always
This
after
wasn't
hours,
about pleasure or
always
sadism.
using the pretext of
Just
difficult
removal
stains
of
stains 5, execute quickly, dissolve thoroughly, no prolonged
leave
suffering,
no trace.
This wasn't
Become
about
part of the
pleasure
building's
or
structure.
sadism. The basement grew. Just removal of stains.
Each
5
victim
became part of the
dissolve
foundation thoroughly. The walls,
leave no
the
trace.
floor.
Become part of the
Cleaners
building's
was
structure.
built on bones.
The
now.
basement grew.
Held together by the
Each
dissolved
victim
remains
became
of
part of
men
the
who hurt
foundation.
children, women
The
who trafficked
walls,
girls, the floor,
predators
who wore respectability.
Matsumoto
Like a
cleaners
clean
was
suit
built
on bones now.
I kept meticulous records.
Held together by the dissolved
Not
remains
names,
of men
names
who
didn't
hurt
matter.
children, women who trafficked
dates,
girls, predators
methods,
who wore respectability.
observations.
Like a clean suit, chemical ratios.
I kept
meticulous records. Dissolution times, not names.
Success
didn't
rates.
matter.
But
Areas
dates,
of improvement, methods. I treated it like my
observations,
business. Chemical
quality
ratios,
control,
dissolution
process
times, improvement, customer
rates,
satisfaction, though the
areas
customers
of
of improvement and the satisfaction
treated
was
it
mine.
like my business.
I never felt guilt. Quality control, never felt remorse. Process improvement. The psychologists
Customer
will call this
satisfaction,
antisocial
but the customers
personality
were dead.
disorder, and the satisfaction was
Psychopathy.
mine. I never
Inability
felt
to
to feel empathy or
Never
form
felt
genuine
remorse.
human connection.
They're
The
correct.
psychologists will call this
But they'll miss
antisocial
the context.
personality disorder. I didn't choose to be this
Psychopathy.
way. The inability
made
to feel
this way,
empathy or form
shaped
genuine
by
human
trauma.
connection. They're correct. Molded by abuse, but they'll miss the perfected
Context.
by necessity. I didn't choose to
My
be
father
this way. Wanted a perfect son. I was made this way. Obedient, shaped, skilled, by trauma, unfeeling, molded by abuse. He got exactly what he created. Perfected by necessity. A human-shaped tool. My father wanted a perfect stain son. Remover who understood that
Obedient,
sometimes the stain is
skilled,
a person. Did I enjoy
unfeeling.
it? No, he got exactly
Enjoyment
what he created.
requires
Emotional capacity.
capacity.
A human-shaped tool. I observed it. A stain remover who
appreciated
understood
the
that
efficiency.
sometimes the stain is
To
a
a person.
satisfaction
Did I enjoy
in work
it?
done well. No.
But
Enjoyment
joy,
requires
pleasure,
emotional
these
capacity.
are for people.
I observed
And I
it. Stopped being a person
appreciated
somewhere
the
around
efficiency.
age 12. Did I think
I was
satisfaction in work done well? Perhaps. But joy in an abstract
pleasure.
way. These are for people. Each person I
And I
removed
stopped
had
being
hurt
a
others
person.
somewhere around age
Their
12.
absence
Did I think
created
I
a
was
statistical
statistical reduction in
perhaps.
suffering? In an
But I didn't
abstract
do it
way
for
the victims. Each person
I did it
removed
because I
had
could.
hurt others. Because it was what
Their
I was built
absence
for. Created a statistical
universe's
reduction in
quality
suffering. Control. But I didn't
do it
stain
for the
remover
victims.
humanity needed. I did it because
didn't
I
want
could
to
acknowledge the last kill. Because it was what I was
2024.
built for. I was
Her
the
name
universe's
was
quality
Yuki
control.
Tanaka.
The stain remover
23 years
humanity
old.
needed, but didn't
She
want to
worked
acknowledge
at
the
a
last
hostess
kill.
bar
In
Roppongi.
2024, came
Her
into my
name
shop one
was
day
Yuki
with a dress
Tanaka.
stained with what she said was wine. I am 23 years
wasn't
old. Wine. She
It
was
worked
blood at a hostess bar.
I could tell
in
by
the
the
pattern, the oxidation. Came into my shop
way it
one day
responded
with a
to
dress
testing.
stained with what she
Her
said
blood.
was wine. And someone
It
else's
wasn't wine.
I asked no questions. It was blood. Removed the stain. I could tell by the pattern. The dress was oxidation. She thanked me. The way it responded to testing. She came back the
Her
next
blood.
week. And someone
Different
else's
stains.
I asked no questions.
Same story.
Wine,
Removed the
not
stain.
wine. The dress was
Blood.
clean. The third
She
time I
thanked
said.
These
Left, she
stains
came
are
back
difficult.
the next week. May I
Different
ask what
stains.
happened? She looked at me. Same story. Wine,
Really
not
looked.
wine. Saw something
Blood
in my
the
eyes.
third
Time I
or
said.
the
The absence of something. These stains are difficult. Understood somehow. May I ask
that I
what
wasn't
happened?
judging.
She looked at me. Wasn't a threat. Really looked. Was just observing.
Saw
I heard
something in
someone,
my
she
eyes,
said
or
quietly. Or the absence of something. He hurt me first. Understood
Hurt me for
somehow
years.
that I wasn't judging.
I
Finally fought back. Wasn't
you kill
a threat.
him?
Almost. Was
Should
just
have.
observing. I hurt someone. Next
She
time
said
I will.
quietly.
I processed this
He
information.
hurt me
first.
Hurt me for
Recognized her
years.
pattern. I finally
She
fought
was
back.
learning
Did
to
you kill him?
remove her own
Almost stains. Should have. Becoming what I was.
Next
Time I will.
if you
I
need help,
processed
I
this
said,
information with removal. Recognized her
Complete
pattern. Removal. She was
have
learning
experience
to remove
with
her
her
own
own
stains. She understood. Becoming what I was. People who live
If
in
you need
certain
help,
kinds of
I said,
darkness
with
recognize
removal.
each other. Complete
much do you
removal. charge? Nothing. I have experience with
Some
difficult
stains
deserve removal. She understood. Consider
People
who live in
public
certain kinds of
service.
darkness
His
recognize
name
each
was
other. Hiroshi Nakamura. How much do you charge?
Her pimp.
Nothing. Her abuser. Some stains deserve
The
removal.
man
Man who trafficked her since she
Consider
was
it
15. A public service. Who beat her when quotas
His
weren't
name
met. Was Hiroshi Nakamura. Who rented her body to men. Her pimp who didn't care. Her abuser. She was barely alive. The man
Behind
who
her eyes.
trafficked her since she was 15. brought him to my shop. Beat her when quotas weren't said. I was an uncle who could get stains out of an expensive jacket he needed for a meeting. That she was barely alive. He came after hours, as requested. Brought him to my shop. I showed him to the back room. Said I was an uncle who could get stains out of an expensive jacket he needed for a meeting. Never had a witness before. He came after hours, but something about her presence felt right. I showed him to the back room. Like she deserved to see the stain removed. This was new. Used the plastic bag. Never had a witness before. Quick, but something about her presence felt right. Appropriate. They always do. Like she deserved to see the stain deprivation is inevitable. I used the plastic bag and struggling just hastens it. Yuki watched. He struggled. Didn't help. Didn't hinder. They always do. Just bore witness. But oxygen deprivation is inevitable. She spat on his face. And struggling just hastens it. The stain is removed, I replied. Didn't help. Did you like to help with disposal? She did. I showed her the basement. She spat on his face. Thank you, she said. The room where the stain is removed, waited, I replied. Explained the process. Would you like to help with disposal? She did. The timeline. I showed her the basement. We dissolved him together. The maze took turns monitoring where the acid baths waited the necessary process. Chemistry, ground the insoluble timelines. We dissolved him together. On the second day, while we waited for the final stage, the vats, Yuki asked, waited the necessary hours, including him. Ground, do you feel any insoluble remains? When do you do it? No. On the second day, I don't feel much of waited for the final stage. Haven't Yuki since asked. I was a child. How many do you do it then? I thought about including this. Him. Do you feel anything? The first time anyone had asked. And do you do it? No, because it's what I don't feel much of anything. What I was made to do. Haven't since I was a child. Some people are built to create. I thought about this. I was built to remove. The first time anyone had asked. Understanding what something I'm for. I couldn't articulate. What I was made to do. You teach me? She asked. Some people are built to create. I am writing this confession. I was because Yuki asked me to. She nodded. Because she said the understanding know what happens in the basement of Matsumoto cleaners. She asked. Not to glorify. I am writing this confession because Yuki asked me to, but to document because she said the world is taking over what happens in the basement of Matsumoto cleaners. I am tired. Not to glorify it. The work of stain removal, not to excuse the legitimate and the illegitimate kind. She is taking over me down to nothing. I have taught her everything. I am tired. Chemistry, the work of stain removal, both the legitimate selection and the illegitimate kind. The method has worn me down to nothing. She will continue what I taught her everything, but differently. Chemistry, she feels things I don't. Rage, selection criteria, purpose. The method, she will be better at this than I was. She will continue what I started. Because she knows why she's doing it. Because she feels things I don't. She saves. Rage, not just the stains she removes. Purpose. She will be better at this than I will disappear, because she knows why she's doing it. I've seen too much of what happens there to want that ending, not just the stains she removes, into anonymity. As for me, into the crowds of Tokyo, not a middle-aged man. I've seen too much of what happens there to want that blend completely. But into anonymity, this confession with Yuki. Into the crowd, she will decide when to release it. A middle-aged man, if I release no distinguishing features, she has judgment, can blend completely. I only have a process postscript. I will leave this confession with you. Who read this will try to understand when to release it. They will use if I release like trauma and dissociation, judgment, and antisocial have personality disorder. The psychologists who read trace my development try to understand from abused child to serial killer. Use words like trauma and dissociation, the warning signs, and antisocial personality disorder. The predictable progression. They will trace my development. They will be correct abused child in their analysis to serial killer. I am a textbook. They will note the warning signs, nature, nurture, the risk factor, circumstance, the creating a human tool designed for one specific in their analysis. The removal of human stain case, but they will miss something essential. And circumstance. They will ask, creating a human shape tool different, designed for one specific purpose, have saved him. The removal of human stains, medication, support, but they will miss something essential. The answer is no. They will ask, by age 9, I was already gone. Could intervention have saved him? A child who could have become a person, medication, dead, support, have prevented what this? Remained, the answer was a function. No. By age 9, I was already gone. A stain remover who happened to be shaped, who could have become a person, was already dead. Father made me. What remained shaped me was a function. My mother's silence completed me. I am their remover who happened to be shaped like a human. The thing that happens when a child is treated not as a person shaped me, but as a tool. My mother's silence for understanding. I am their creation.
do not seek forgiveness.
Their legacy.
I am documenting
The thing
not
that happens
justifying.
when a child is treated
These
not
are facts,
as a person, but
this
as a tool.
is what happened.
I do not ask for understanding.
This is what I am.
I do not
19
seek
people are gone.
forgiveness. I am
Their bodies
documenting,
dissolved.
not justifying. They remain part
These
of the
are
structure
facts.
of Matsumoto
This
cleaners.
is what happened.
They hold up
This
the walls.
is what I am.
They
19 people
strengthen
are
the
gone.
foundation. Their bodies
They are
dissolved.
quite literally.
They remain
building
part of the
is
structure
built
of
on.
Matsumoto
Every stain
cleaners.
has been removed.
They hold up the walls.
Every problem
They
has been
strengthen
solved.
the foundation. The work
They
is
are quite
complete.
literally.
And I,
But the building
the
is
stain
built on.
remover,
Every stain
am ready
has been
to
removed.
dissolve. Author note.
Every problem has been
This
solved.
is a work of fiction. The work
Exploring
exploring
the
the psychological
and
development
the
of a
stain
serial
remover,
killer. Am
through the
ready to
framework
dissolve
of childhood
author
trauma.
note. Sexual
This
abuse
is a work of fiction
and sociopathy.
exploring the
It
psychological
examines
development
how severe
of a serial
abuse
killer
can destroy a
through the
child's
framework
capacity
of childhood
for empathy
trauma
and human
sexual
connection,
abuse,
creating
sociopathy.
what psychologists call
It examines how
antisocial
severe
personality
abuse
disorder
can destroy a
or
child's
psychopathy
capacity
for empathy,
the
and human
character of
connection,
Kenji,
represents
creating
the
what
intersection
psychologists call
of nature,
antisocial
possible genetic
personality
predisposition,
disorder,
or
nurture,
psychopathy, severe abuse. The character
and
of
opportunity
Kenji represents
the
the
isolated
isolated environment
of nature,
of the family
possible
business.
genetic predisposition,
His methodical approach,
nurture,
emotional
severe
flatness,
abuse,
and selection of
opportunity.
victims, who are
The
themselves
isolated
predators
environment
of the
reflects
family business.
research on organized
His
serial
methodical
killers,
approach,
who
emotional
often
flatness,
rationalize their
and
actions
selection of victims
through a distorted sense
who are
of
themselves
justice.
predators,
The
reflects
labyrinthine
research
dry
on
cleaning shop
organized serial
serves
killers as both literal
who often
and
metaphorical
rationalize their
maze,
actions,
a
through a
space
distorted sense
where the
of
hidden
justice,
horrors of abuse,
the
transform
labyrinthine
into
dry
hidden
cleaning
horrors
shop
of murder,
serves as
where
both
stains,
literal
both
and
literal
metaphorical
and
maze,
human,
are
a
removed
space
from sight, where the hidden horrors
but
of
never
abuse
truly erased.
transform into hidden
This story
horrors of
does
murder,
not excuse
where stains
glorify
both literal
violence
and human,
but
are
attempts
removed
to
to understand the mechanisms
but never truly
by
erased.
which severe childhood
This
trauma
story does not
can
excuse
create individuals
or glorify
incapable
violence,
of normal human
but attempts
empathy to understand
or
the
connection.
mechanisms by which severe childhood trauma can create individuals incapable of normal human empathy or connection.